When Augustine was still a young boy, he entered the monastery of St. Andrew in Rome. He took vows of poverty, chastity and obedience, and also a vow of stability. He probably expected to spend his whole life in the monastery. His daily life revolved around praying the monastic offices, and we know that he rose to the office of prior or deputy to the abbot. The founder of Augustine's monastery was a Roman nobleman who'd been prefect of the city of Rome and later took vows and converted his house into the monastery where Augustine lived. At the age of 50, he became Pope Gregory, and having seen English children for sale as slaves in the marketplace, he wanted to send a mission to bring England into the Catholic Church. Pope Gregory knew and trusted Augustine as prior of his monastery, and now he entrusted him with a mission to England. He chose 40 monks to accompany him. We can only imagine what Augustine must have thought and felt as he left behind a life of security and routine for an uncertain mission to a foreign country. Augustine's journey with his brothers was far from straightforward. They heard stories of how terrible England was and how uncivilized the English were. The brothers were frightened, and at one point Augustine had to return to Rome to tell the Pope that they were afraid to go on. The Pope made Augustine abbot of the mission and gave him authority to compel the brothers to travel to England. Eventually, in the spring of the year 597, Augustine and his 40 brothers arrived in England, probably at the Isle of Thanet. King Ethelbert of Kent came in person to greet him. Ethelbert, a pagan, was married to Queen Bertha, who was a Christian, and it may well have been through her influence that he decided to greet St. Augustine personally. The king was impressed with St. Augustine's politeness and civility, even though they spoke through an interpreter. He asked Augustine to accompany him to his capital at Canterbury and establish his church there. He also told St. Augustine that he was free to convert as many of the people as he could persuade of the truth of the gospel. In Canterbury, the king gave Augustine the little church dedicated to St. Martin of Tours, and he began a ministry of preaching, teaching, and converting the local pagans. Augustine's ministry was successful, and he sent Brother Lawrence back to Rome with news of how well the mission was going. To St. Augustine's surprise and joy, the king asked to be instructed in the Christian faith and to be baptized. Once the king had become a Christian, many of his subjects decided to convert as well, and on Christmas Day in the year 597, only a few months after St. Augustine's arrival, 10,000 people were baptized by St. Augustine himself. With many new Christians in England, Pope Gregory made Augustine an archbishop and sent a pallium from Rome signifying his status. He gave instructions for the consecration of 12 new suffragan bishops, and Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury, leader of the new English Church in communion with the Bishop of Rome. Augustine was a wise and astute archbishop, and when Pope Gregory insisted that the bishops of Wales and the west of England submit to him as archbishop, he called a council and tried to persuade them. However, they refused to acknowledge his authority. He had more success in other areas and founded the first school in England, the King's School at Canterbury. Having achieved a great deal in just a few short years, St. Augustine now realised that his life was drawing to a close. he decided upon an orderly transfer of power, and he chose Brother Lawrence, who had come as one of the original missionaries with him from Rome, and he consecrated him the second Archbishop of Canterbury. On May the 26th, in the year 604, St. Augustine died, and his brothers carried his body to be buried in the portico of what is now Canterbury Cathedral. Today, almost all Christians in England owe their Christian faith and Christian heritage to St. Augustine of Canterbury.